And so I wonder if any of you have ever had a moment where someone has pushed your buttons and you just lost it. Anybody ever have a moment like that? Right? All the parents raised their hand and said, it's happening to me every day. Right? And so you react out of anger and defensiveness, and then you promise that you're working on it. Guys, if we could just kill that music, that'd be great. Then promise you're working on it. But you're not even sure if you understand what working on it actually means, right? People say that it's all in your head, but if that's true, why does your heart race, your face flush, and your logic disappear, right? What if it's not just your brain that's getting you into trouble? What if it's also your body? And if that's the case, how do you keep your feelings from hijacking your thoughts? If you're taking notes, the title of our message today, as we wrap up this series, is Over the Edge. Over the Edge. March of 2015, I found myself in the incredible city of Chicago proposing to Tess. And I thought of this like brilliant plan because you want it to be special. And Tess had always talked about one of her best friends growing up named Sarah, and their families met in Germany, but then they came back to the States, and they lived in different parts of the country. And so one of the things that was like evident to me was like, man, like, are we going to be able to share these significant milestones in life together because we live in different parts of the country? And so I thought, man, it'd be cool if Sarah could be a part of the proposal somehow. And so I came up with this plan, and as a Valentine's gift, I bought Tess a ticket to Chicago, and I said, hey, I want you to go spend the weekend in Chicago with Sarah. And they hadn't seen each other in a while, and so that's what I did. And all the while, I've been working with Sarah on a plan that at some point that weekend, I was going to fly up to Chicago. Sarah was going to bring Tess to where I was, and I was going to propose. And so Tess is there enjoying her weekend. She has no idea any of this is happening. And I'm getting on a plane on a Saturday, and really, she doesn't think that I'm coming because I texted her, and I was like, oh, yeah, I'm getting ready to go to church because I had to work on Saturdays. And so she thinks I'm going to work, and I'm on a plane. I got the ring in my book bag, and like, man, when you're in that moment, you're like guarding that ring like it's like everything you got, right? And so I'm like opening the book bag on the plane, checking, make sure it's there. Okay, it's still there, and my bag has not moved, and you open it again and make sure that it's still there. And if you've ever been to Chicago, really from the end of October to the beginning of April, it is ice cold. And if you were to pull out your phone this morning and saw what temperature it was, it felt like 24 degrees there this morning. And so, timing probably wasn't ideal, but this was the plan. And so I remember landing, and I went to a flower shop, and I got some flowers, and then I went to the place where we were proposing, and Sarah had helped me pick out this place, and it was in Lincoln Park, and really cool piece of architecture. And so I'm there, and I'm texting Sarah the whole time, and I'm like, getting their ETA and where they're at. And Sarah's like, oh, we're working our way up to Lincoln Park, and we should be there in a little bit. And I'm standing there, and it's cold. And I don't really have another outfit because I'm only here for like 24 hours. And so I'm standing there. I got the flowers, and it's this big architectural piece, and this is a public park, and so people are just walking by, and I'm probably standing there for a good 30 minutes, and you're kind of moving your body to try to get warm, and I keep trying to put one hand in my pocket because it's cold, and got to hold the flowers with the other hand, and there's like, I'm not hearing anything from Sarah, and I'm like, what is going on? So I text Sarah, like, Sarah, where are you? And she's like, oh, we're still at the Navy Pier. And but we're trying to work towards there. We got to figure out how to get on the bus to get up that way. And I'm like, okay, I need you to get here because I'm cold. And so because this was such a popular spot, this couple came, and they wanted to take some wedding pictures. And so the photographer comes up to me. He's like, hey, excuse me, do you mind moving for a little bit? And I'm like, I got here so that I would have this spot for this moment, but I don't know when they're going to be here. So I'm literally sitting to the side watching this couple take their pictures, and I'm like, please leave. Please hurry up. How many of those pictures do you need? Y'all just did the same picture like 10 times. She can just duplicate the picture, okay? I need y'all to leave. And so finally they leave, And I go back to standing there, and I'm standing again for probably a good another 30 minutes, ice cold. And this guy who had saw me when I got there, he came up to me and he said, "Hey man, is everything good?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just cold. I'm just waiting. I'm about to propose." And he said, "Oh, I saw you've been standing here for like an hour. I thought maybe she didn't show up. And I wanted to check in on you." And I'm like, "Okay, I appreciate that, but no, she's coming." And you're already overwhelmed. You're already sweating. You're nervous. Like you don't know. You can't think straight, right? And so it's a public space, and so I'm standing here. There's this architectural piece, and in front of me, where you guys are sitting right now, there was this bridge that people walked over because it's a huge park. And so people saw that something was about to happen. And so these people start to walk across the bridge, but they stop because they are wanting to see what's going to happen. They see me standing with flowers, right? And so they're like, "Oh, he's about to do something. We want to be here." I kid you not, by the time that Tess actually got there are probably about 25 people standing on this bridge. So I propose, Tess says yes, and the people on the bridge erupt. And Tess looks at me and she goes, "Do you know these people?" I said, "I don't know who they are." Right? And I believe we have a picture that we took when we went back to Chicago a little bit after of where this took place. And man, we look like kids. But it was this really cool piece. Now I can tell you, leading up to that moment, and you guys have probably had moments like this, man, I just felt completely overwhelmed, out of control. You're thinking about what you're gonna say, and then the time comes and you forget everything that you had thought about for the last however long you were thinking about it. In those moments, you're trying to control it, but the more you try to control it, the more out of control you feel. Right? And you know, you don't feel like yourself. You're unable to think straight. And maybe someone said, "Relax, it's all in your mind," but it didn't feel that way. It felt physical. And the reason it felt physical is because it is. In her book, The Wisdom of Your Body, one of our resources for this series, written by Dr. Hillary McBride, this is what she writes: "Emotions happen inside the body. They signal to us and others through our body what's going on with us. Our bodies are always calling us into awareness of what does not work and what needs to heal. Unprocessed emotions don't just disappear, but linger, speaking through our bodies in the form of trauma responses and pain." And really what she's saying is that our feelings always show up in our bodies. Like slumped shoulders when we're upset, or nervous laughter when we're anxious. It's almost like our bodies react before we even realize how we feel. But because we're so focused on getting things done, moving on to the next thing, these reactions can feel like inconvenient interruptions. And I think you've been there, thinking that, you know what, I need to stay calm, but I can't, right? And the interview tanks, or the family conversation blows up, or you say something hurtful that you never meant to say, and you're left thinking, wait, that's not me. That's not who I really am. And when we're stressed, people aren't seeing the real you. They're seeing the stressed reaction of who you are. And some people manage to ride that emotional wave and regain control. And I wonder, how do they do that? And how can we, knowing our anxious state affects everything we do, how can we regain control? Esther was in an incredibly stressful situation. Right? Her people are on the verge of genocide, and it's heavily relying on her taking some sort of action. I can imagine that she was terrified. She even says in passages that we've read throughout this series that she might die. But when the king welcomed her, she didn't react with panic or an emotional rant. Instead, she stayed calm and she responded with wisdom. Many of us, though, we get stuck in a cycle of stress and reaction, pushing loved ones away, apologizing, and then repeating that cycle all over again. And if Esther had done what many of us do, her story might have ended there, but she did something unexpected. Look at what Esther 5, verse 4, it says this: "And Esther replied, 'If it please the king, let the king and Haman come today to a banquet I prepared for the king.'" And so Esther's in a high stress situation. But instead of panicking, she invites everyone to a party, and that's what we want you to get out of today. That when you were stressed, throw a party. When you were stressed, have a party. Invite people over, have a party. That's what she does, right? Now, the only way that Esther is able to even remotely think about planning a party, which sounds absurd when you remember everything that's happening around her and to her people, is she stays calm and she's composed and she's strategic. Two things that most of us aren't in those moments, and the result is pretty interesting. Look at what verse 6 says. It says, and while they were drinking wine, the king said to Esther, now tell me what you really want. What is your request? I will give it to you, even if it is half the kingdom. Jump to verse 9a. This is what it says. Haman was a happy man as he left the banquet. So Esther clearly has a plan, and what's impressive is her ability to stay calm enough to carry it out despite the stress around her. And when you're completely stressed, thinking straight feels almost impossible. Anxiety starts to take over your brain. And Dr. Hillary McBride, she says, you can't just talk your feelings away. You have to feel them. You have to move through them. But emotions tend to shut down our ability to think critically. And if you're taking notes, you can write this down. This means to get full access to your mind, you have to first calm your body. And we find ourselves in a stressful situation. In order for us to get full access to our mind, our full mental capacity, we have to first calm our body. And Esther, she stays calm, which is key to pulling this off. Could you imagine if your partner showed up to work unannounced and they said, we need to talk? You'd probably be a little bit on edge. Stress meter would start to go up. And some of us, we just get the text message, you need to talk, and we're already losing it, right? But Esther's calmness immediately puts everyone else at ease, even the king. And that's because emotions are contagious, right? I think we've all seen a stressful person walk into a room full of unstressful people. And it's interesting to see how people are going to react, right? Because a stressful person walks into a room. Some people are going to become stressful, and they're going to rise to the level of that stress while others are going to leave. And that's how they've chosen to handle the stress. Emotions are contagious. We've also seen people who've walked into a stressful environment and it brought peace and calm to it. I think about several Sundays ago when we had all these trucks out here with bags and bags and bags of clothes. And I remember walking out at the end of the service thinking, oh my gosh, I'm never going home tonight. And then there was Jake. Jake took the megaphone, and in an environment that was completely chaotic and could be overwhelming, Jake brought a state of calm and steadiness to that environment. And he got it done. And so emotions are contagious. And if you're taking notes, here's our big idea today. People who learn to calm themselves can share that calm with everyone else. People who learn to calm themselves can share that calm with everyone else. And this is so important to us in our relationships. And there's a scientific term for this. It's called co-regulation. And co-regulation is the process of a person with a regulated nervous system sharing their calm state with someone with a dysregulated nervous system, right? We've all seen a parent calming a crying baby, right, with a soothing voice and patience and a gentle touch. How do you keep that? Seems to go away as soon as they start walking and talking and being a real person, right? We've seen yelling at a baby, and we've seen how that really doesn't help the stressful situation. It seems to make it worse, but I think we often do the same in relationships. When our partner is upset, instead of calming them, we usually tend to escalate the situation. And the reason is you can't give calm if you don't have it yourself. And so to help others regulate, you have to first regulate yourself. If you're taking notes, you can write this down. Self-regulation is the ability to control your behavior, emotions, and thoughts in the pursuit of long-term goals. It's what empowers us to fight through discomfort for the sake of a big picture value. You can almost think of self-regulation as playing the long game, right? And I think it's impressive when someone can stay calm under stress, especially since most of us usually react impulsively, right? When we're stressed, we often start to stress others out too. We don't know how to calm ourselves down, so we can't help others do it either. And stress can feel like a constant threat with no clear way to come down. But Esther, she knows how to self-regulate. And because of that, she brings calm to everyone around her. And this made a huge difference in the life of her people, shifting the fate of a nation. Look at what Esther 7:3-4, it says this. Queen Esther replied, if I have found favor with the king, and if it pleases the king to grant my request, I ask that my life and the lives of my people will be spared. For my people and I have been sold to those who would kill, slaughter, and annihilate us. If we had merely been sold as slaves, I could remain quiet, for that would be too trivial a matter to warrant disturbing the king. And so her husband, the king, is actually shocked to hear this. He's also 2 bottles of wine in, and so he's probably ready to throw down. But look at what verse 5 says. It says, who would do such a thing, King Xerxes demanded? Who would be so presumptuous as to touch you? And Esther, calmly and composed, she points at Haman and says, him. And what does the king do? The king stops him. Haman is executed and the Jewish people are saved. And what's interesting is that Esther's ability to self-regulate came from her Jewish heritage, right? Old Testament wisdom teaches that feelings aren't bad. They're actually just information. Feelings are informing us, and we need to lean into them and understand what they're trying to teach us. And I believe this is the heart behind the first 11 verses in Ecclesiastes chapter 3. Those verses remind us that everything in life has a time and a season, from birth to death to laughter and mourning. And while we may not fully understand God's timing and reasons behind the changes and the ups and downs that we experience in life, we are assured that everything he does is beautiful in its time, and that he has placed eternity in our hearts. I think it's interesting how our feelings show up through physical actions like laughing or crying, and yet we often avoid really feeling them. We tend to push the tough emotions aside, thinking that we can skip them. But we need to let our bodies process and move through what we are feeling. Even in the Bible, God gives instructions like lifting hands, kneeling, or weeping as a way to help us process emotions both mentally and physically. And there are 2 components to self-regulation: preventative rhythms and prepared responses. Now, the rhythms, they're taking this to write this down. Rhythms are the routines that you build into your everyday life. And so what are the rhythms that you have built into your everyday life that help you to self-regulate? Because if you don't have the rhythms, you won't have a routine. Because the routine is what you do to restore your calm when your buttons get pushed. And the reason it's important to have the rhythm is so that the routine feels natural. Right? Because stress is inevitable, right? Some of us are going to go to work tomorrow and it's going to be a stressful day. So if you know that stress is coming, right, we have to create preventative rhythms for us to handle and manage that stress in such a way that it would not be detrimental to the people around us. And so we got to learn how to manage our own stress, calm ourselves so that we could bring that same type of energy to our relationships. So whether it's, I think about Esther, who would have grown up with rhythms like daily prayer 3 times a day, meditation, Sabbath, and fasting, and Jesus, being Jewish too, practiced similar things like praying often and encouraging his disciples to rest. Look at what 1 Corinthians 9:27, it says this: I discipline my body like an athlete, training it to do what it should. Otherwise, I fear that after preaching to others, I myself might be disqualified. And so to manage your emotions, it's helpful to build regular routines that help release stress before it builds up too much. Think of it like slowly letting pressure out of a shaken soda bottle. Consistent release helps avoid explosions. And so whether it's devotions, exercise, or regular check-ins with a friend, having these routines and rhythms is important, but you also need to plan your responses ahead of time for when the stress hits. Like imagining your anxiety as a harmless creature so you can calm it instead of making it worse. And so here's what that process might look like as we bring this series to a close. I want to give us 7 things that I think might help us be prepared with the right responses. The first is notice. You got to pay attention to signs that your body is giving to you that you are stressed. Most of us try to do something to make it go away without acknowledging that I think I'm nervous. I think I'm frustrated about this. The second thing, you got to sigh. Right? The sigh pumps the brakes on your fight or flight response by taking long, slow breaths, the out breath to last the longest. And one of the things that I love that Tess has taught our son to do so well when he gets worked up, when kids start crying, they start crying so hard, they start gagging. This stuff don't make no sense to me. But they be getting worked up, and Tess has taught Zion, she's like, hey, take deep breaths. And it's very cute watching a little kid try to take deep breaths because they're not deep. All he's doing is But here's what I can tell you. I can tell you that, and those of you that have had kids, you know what I'm talking about. They're crying so much and so hard, they're actually not aware of what's happening around them anymore. Right? They don't understand. They don't hear that you're trying to communicate with them, right? They're losing their mind. And you're like, tell me what you need. I'll get it for you if you stop, right? I'll give you anything. You want ice cream? He ain't hearing it. He's crying, gagging, right? Take deep breaths, right? But as soon as he starts to take those deep breaths, here's what happens every time. It's like he snaps out of it. And he finally hears us. And it's like, we've been saying this for the last 10 minutes. You've been losing your mind. But those deep breaths, they calmed his body and they brought him back into reality. It's almost like he loses himself in those moments. And so that deep breath, that sigh is so important. The third thing is you got to soften your focus, right? I think what happens when we're stressed is we get hyper-focused. Our eyes especially get hyper-focused on something. And so softening your focus signals to your brain that you can relax, that everything is going to be okay. The fourth thing is you got to move. You got to shake your legs. You got to rock back and forth. You got to pace. Movement, especially shaking, is an effective way to calm stress. I remember when the first time I was leading worship at this church I was working at in Atlanta. So one of the first times I was in a room leading worship in front of probably 3,500 people every Sunday for every service. And I remember I could tell that my boss, he could tell the first time I was freaking out. I was freaking out. And he said, hey, what I want you to do before you come out for the first service is I want you, before you come out, just move your body. And I was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I'm not doing that, right? So first service happens, and I can tell you that my voice cracked probably 7 times. And he came back and he said, hey, before you come out for the next service, I need you to shake your body. And he's like, look, it happens to all of us, but he kept it very real and loving. He said, you sounded terrible. And he's just very real. He's like, and I know you're better than that. So before you come out, I need you to shake your body. And so sure enough, I'm backstage and getting ready to walk out. And in my head, I'm like, I'm not doing that. That's so dumb. And sure enough, here I am. Close my eyes, not a good idea. And so I'm just like, my friend comes up behind me and he goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm doing what Chris told me to do, okay? Leave me alone. But can I tell you, it made a difference. It made a difference. All right, so you got to move. Fifth thing you got to do is you got to accept the way that you feel. Trying not to feel what you're feeling makes you actually feel it more. So if you don't acknowledge that you're sad, guess what? You're going to be more sad, right? If you don't acknowledge that you're frustrated, you're going to get even more frustrated. And again, one of the things that I love that Tess has done with our son so well is just helping him understand, hey, it's okay that you feel upset right now. It's okay that you're frustrated, right? One of the things that I love that our son, if I'm in the car with him or if we're somewhere, if I'm watching something and I react kind of harshly, he looks, he goes, Dad, you frustrated? He knows, right? But as funny as that is, I'm actually glad that he has the awareness to know what that feeling looks like at his age. And he understands that, hey, yeah, there are going to be times where we're frustrated, right? And so like the first time he did it, we were in the car and he goes, Mama, you frustrated? And I'm like, where did he learn that? She's like, I think I reacted while I was driving and could tell he heard the word and now he's frustrated. Last week, this was funny. I'm in his room. He had a moment like he does, and I'm in his room trying to talk to him, and he he looks at me and he goes, Dada, are you sad? I said, no, I'm not sad. He said, are you sad? I was like, are you sad? He's like, no, I'm not sad. I'm sad. And I was like, there was this moment of him like trying to not acknowledge it, but then acknowledging it. But I love that Tess has really talked to him about his feelings and not avoiding it, but like, hey, it's okay for you to be upset. It's okay for you to be frustrated, because those are very real things. And even at your age, we want you to understand it. Number 6 is you got to make soothing sounds, right? You got to murmur, you got to hum, you got to sing, you got to chant. Science has told us that speaking in a low, slow voice is soothing, right? And so if you find yourself stressed, try to be Barry White, okay? Number 7 is you got to speak kindly to yourself, right? You got to speak kindly to yourself. And when you do that, it's not just telling yourself that I'm okay. Science actually tells us that you got to speak to yourself as if you're speaking to a different person, because it is actually more effective. And so you're not saying I'm okay, you're actually telling yourself you're okay. You're gonna get through this. You're gonna be able to move on. You're gonna be able to go to the next thing, right? And so you gotta speak kindly to yourself. And here's the good news is by calming yourself and restoring your peace, you'll be able to make better decisions and help those around you too. And if you're taking notes, you can write this down. It only takes one person to start to change the trajectory of a relationship. It only takes one person to start to change the trajectory of a relationship. Imagine if instead of just reacting to stress, you had regular rhythms and prepared responses in place. And by modeling this for others, especially kids, you're teaching them how to handle tough situations calmly, which will help them navigate their own challenges better later on. And so here's our challenge this week. Think about what calms you. Tell your family so they know how to help recenter you. What are the things that calm your body, that calm your mind, that calm your spirit, that bring you peace? And tell your family so they know how to help recenter you. Some of the parents in the room are thinking, so you mean I need to tell kids I need you to leave, right? I'm trying to get recentered, so I need y'all to leave, okay. No, but truly think about what are the things that calm you, and let your family know, right? It's one of those things where like, man, like people can help you to the degree that they know they can help you. And sometimes the very people in our family who we think know us the best are the ones that we got to be as literal with the most. They're saying, hey, this is what calms me. And so if I'm stressed in a stressful situation, could you help me move towards being able to do these things, access these things, so that I can recenter myself for myself, but also for us, right? It can be a little annoying, but it works. And sometimes, you got to ask someone if they need a deep breath, some downtime when they're stressed. It's humbling, but it reminds them that my emotions aren't their fault, which is one of the best things that you can give to the people around you. Can I invite you to stand as I pray for us today? Jesus, we love you. We thank you for who you are. We thank you for what you've done and what you're doing. And God, I thank you that you are peace. In the midst of chaos, you aren't just the feeling, but you are peace. And I pray that you would help us bring awareness and mindfulness to the things that help to calm our bodies, to calm our minds and our spirits and our souls. And as we bring awareness to what those things are, I pray that we would have the courage to communicate to the people that we care about and that we love the most, to communicate clearly what we need to be recentered when we find ourselves overwhelmed with stress. Would you help us to create rhythms and routines, to be prepared in advance, to handle the stress that we know will come? And would you help all of us in the room be able to model for those that are younger than us what it looks like to manage stress well, knowing that it brings health to our relationships? We can't do it without you. And so we ask for you to be in the process of gaining awareness and mindfulness for these things with us. We love you, we bless you, and it's in Jesus' name we pray. And everybody said, amen and amen. Church, we love you. We'll see you next week.
South Hills Church, I just want to take a moment and say thank you for watching our service online. Whether you're watching it for the first time or you're watching it again because you enjoyed the service so much from the weekend, I'd like to take a moment and dive into our giving. Every week we give people the opportunity to give back and give to the local church so that God can continue to bless your lives and bless your finances. Here at South Hills, we believe that everything comes from God. We believe that He's the one that chose us and brought us into this world, gave us our gifts and talents and abilities. And I just want you to know that when we give, we are giving back what God has already given to us. If you've ever seen any of our envelopes at a South Hills campus, you'll see on there that it says, every week at South Hills, your generosity is giving people the opportunity to live a better story. And there's a scripture on there in Matthew chapter 6, verse 21 that says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So I want to encourage you today to click down below and set up your giving, whether it's for the first time or whether you're doing reoccurring giving. We have 4 ways to give here at South Hills. 1, you can do it in person at any of our campuses through an envelope. Or 2, you can actually text any amount that you would like to 84321. And the 3rd way is to download our Church Center app. I encourage you to do this one because the Church Center app gives you opportunity to stay connected with our church and your campuses. It's a great tool and resource for you to know what's going on. And the 4th way to give is to give online. You can go to southhills.org/give and you can set up your giving there. Whether you're a guest of our church or whether you are a member of our church, or whether you simply just like to watch our services, I encourage you to trust God with your finances so that He can bless and anoint your finances, and you can be trusting God in this journey of living life to the fullest. I love you, and thank you for watching our online service today.